What is up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on a Saturday afternoon. Actually, it's the morning. Excuse me. 10 a.m. here in California. It's all good. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing today?
I'm okay, but had happened to me what happens to every man every time he has a single ounce of time off or any moment for relaxation. He gets sick. So had the classic thing happen to me where I finally get to rest and relax, and I got sick. So that's what I get for saying one nice thing about the Raiders, I guess.
Yeah, karma, I guess. Karma. That always happens to me. I always get sick over Christmas break every single year without fail. So I'm either sick on Christmas or sick on
Yeah.
my birthday, one or the other every year. It does not matter what kind of vitamin C I take or whatever. I'm always sick over Christmas break.
Yeah. So I'll survive, but it's just classic. Every time there's a break, my body goes, cool, thanks. So what I'm gonna do is just never take a break for the rest of my life,
Yeah.
and I'll live forever.
Yeah, who needs vacations,
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
It's not like you have a wedding coming up and want to go on a honeymoon or anything.
No, no. Well, that's kind of it's not work, but it's a lot of work, So I guess that'll keep me healthy.
Yeah.
Well, I don't mean like that in the honeymoon. Forget it.
I gotcha. I knew what you meant. All right. So we're here today. We're going to talk about some Chargers preseason award odds. So we're going to go through some of the notable players, and as well as the coach, and we'll talk about some things like that. There were no Chargers on the comeback player of the year list, so I have to throw that out there. I wish there were like an offensive coordinator award. That would be cool because I would love to see where Kellen Moore would be on that one. But we're going to use DraftKings. So I know that there's a bit of different odds around there. DraftKings has been kind of like my go-to because it's like the easiest one to use without having to sign up for an account. So all of the odds that we are going to mention today or throw on the screen will be courtesy of DraftKings. It should be an interesting discussion. So mention him first and foremost. We're going to start with Coach Staley over here. Last year was one of the favorites for Coach of the Year award heading into the season. This year, plus 2,500. He's tied for 8th. There's a bunch of ties. So he's tied for 8th, but really I think he's like 17th on the list or something like that. So a bit of a different national narrative this year for Brandon Staley heading into the season. Tyler, what do you make of his placement on the odds list here?
It makes sense. Going into last year, the Chargers, looked like they were good. Going into last year, the Chargers looked good on offense, or that they would be good on offense. They just needed those defensive pieces. So you go trade for Khalil Mack, you get J.C. Jackson. So you really have an opportunity here to take that huge leap. And their leap was a game and a playoff appearance that ended in a tragic loss. So, him being there's 10 coaches ahead of him on DraftKings, and then he's tied for 5 other guys for Coach of the Year odds. I understand why they would place him here, and I wouldn't really consider him the favorite, especially because, like look at Andy Reid. He has the worst odds for a Coach of the Year, and it has nothing to do with him being a bad coach or a good coach. It's just what else can they do? And with someone like Brandon Staley, do I expect, or does anyone expect them to beat the Chiefs in the division this year? I don't. Clearly, Vegas and most odds don't as is. So if you're not going to beat the Chiefs for your division and you won 10 games last year, then you're really like looking at 11 games this year at best. And does that deserve Coach of the Year if you're not even going to win your own division and you can only improve by so much anyway? No. So the Chargers would have to go like 15-2 and beat the Chiefs for Brandon Staley to win this. And I just don't see that happening. So I understand why he's lower on this list.
Yeah, I understand too. The odds are certainly interesting. I mean, Sean Payton is the second highest odds, which I think is like the Broncos aren't even favored to make the playoffs. So that's a confusing one. Robert Saleh, I understand completely why he's high on the list because all the Aaron Rodgers hype and things like that. There's not a lot of rhyme or reason. Like we're going to talk about like MVP odds and like those make a ton of sense. Coach of the Year odds, like Matt LaFleur is top 5. Like why the Packers are going to be bad? Like that doesn't make any sense at all. You mentioned Andy Reid. Brian Dable is like right next to Andy Reid at plus 3,500. So it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like where these odds are placed. typically we have like a first year head coach who like is in a good situation, be like top 5 or top 6, and that's D'Amico Ryans this year. But again, Texans are going to be bad. So, it just the coach of the year odds don't make any sense to me. Burley asking about Doug Peterson. He's tied for 6th, I think that is, at plus 2,200. So the coach of the year odds are like, unless you're top 5, it just doesn't really like, there's not a big dent, right? There's not a huge difference in like odds between Staley and Reed, who's like last.
Yeah, Doug Peterson being not in the top 5. Not that he's far off, but I'm surprised there. I'm a little surprised by Shane Steichen being quote unquote so low. That feels like, you're taking a bad Colts team. You have your new quarterback. There should be some excitement there with what he did with Jalen Hurts, and now you're going with Richardson. I'm surprised he's so low.
Yeah.
Who else?
I mean, Zach Taylor's plus 2,500 too. Like the Bengals could be the best team in the AFC. Like that's a little surprise.
Yeah, at least they've kind of been there though, so I guess I sort of get that. But still, like if they do win, because they almost did last year, win that AFC crown, then yeah, he should be considered. Reich, I do like Reich. I think the most here for that in terms of like odds versus where they are and what they could do.
Yeah.
Like Reich could literally win the division and turn that entire franchise around because they closed out really strong last year. So I could definitely see Reich taking this one.
Yeah, so DraftKings has Frank Reich at plus 2,000. He's 6th on the list. Arthur Smith, I think, is another good bet. Really someone from the NFC, like going in and winning 11 games and
I had
like
the exact same thought.
being a top 3 seed or something like that, like kind of out of nowhere. Like I think that'd be a good bet here. So in terms of Staley's case here, you mentioned obviously like the Chargers would have to exceed expectations, at a pretty high clip. What else do you think the Chargers or the defense or offense or whatever, what else do you think has to happen in order for Staley to make a more legitimate case for coach of the year?
I mean, win on primetime. They have 6 of them. So I think they got to win the games that matter to people that vote. So if you have that many primetime games, you got to go win them. So stopping the Cowboys obviously would be a big one. Like if it were close, it would really come down to that Bills game where if you go out on quote unquote primetime on Peacock and you beat the Bills and you hold Josh Allen and your defense overall throughout the year has been pretty solid, I think that's like your best option to win coach of the year. Yeah, they do have the Chiefs later, but like that game on primetime against the Bills would be huge for Brandon Staley's odds.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think voters will recognize like who finishes seasons strong, who wins on primetime games, and who exceeds expectations. Like, I can't remember who said it earlier in the chat. The Chargers might have to have like a top 5 defense. I don't necessarily agree with that. Like, I think a lot of these awards are narrative awards, and like if the Chargers go out there on these primetime games, and it's like they win because of the defense or they win because of like coaching decisions, that obviously will help Staley's case. So I don't think it's as much a statistical award as much as it is like, how do the Chargers close the season? How do they look in these primetime games? Do they exceed expectations? Do they kind of, because Brandon Staley hasn't like, we haven't seen the previous Chargers where it's like there's a ton of expectations and they just like, fall well below expectations. I mean, they're over under win-loss total. They've gone under by 1 game, I think it is this year, or in 2 years that Staley's been around. So it's not like they haven't, they've plummeted in these situations, so him exceeding expectations this year would be a big deal.
Does he deserve it if the defense is in the 20s, but the Chargers have won the division?
I would say yes, because that means they beat the Chiefs. Like that would, end the division, the 8 years or whatever in a row that the Chiefs have won the division. So if they win the division and the defense kind of struggles, I would still lean yes, because that means we're talking about like a 13-4 season.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting one, because that would mean then the offense is putting up 28 points a game, 30 points a game. So, I don't know. We'll see. I'm really curious in terms of voters how they even feel about Brandon Staley, because it seems everyone was in love and on board. Then it was very split. Then with that Mike Williams situation, some things to end the year, and then the Jaguars lost. Like it really feels like media members are out. So I'd be curious how voters would even vote for someone like Brandon Staley, who's very polarizing.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of narratives around there for Stady for sure. Appreciate Mama Shun in the chat as always, sending in a super sticker. Okay, let's get to the next one here. That's gonna be Quentin Johnston. Wearing a Quentin Johnston homage shirt today.
Oh,
So that's fun.
cool.
He's actually lowered a little bit. He's plus 2,000 on DraftKings now, which is ninth straight up for these kind of odds. So Tyler, we've talked a little bit. Obviously, he's wide receiver 3, maybe 4, depending on how you feel about him. But what do you make of Quentin Johnston's placement on the Offensive Rookie of the Year list?
It seems about fair. I don't know specifically about like JSN situation, how many targets he's going to get, but Flowers is going to get more targets. Addison's going to get more targets. I would assume you have your 3 quarterbacks and Bijan Robinson. So he's kind of right where I'd expect him. The surprise, honestly, for me is like Zach Charbonnet for the Seahawks being right after him.
Yeah.
But he's about where I'd expect. And if he wins, then everything went right for him and everything went wrong for Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. But he's very talented, and I think he has, in a normal situation, in an even situation, as good of odds or not better to win this. But considering where he is and the targets he's gonna have to fight for, Bijan Robinson with 300 touches versus Johnston with 75 targets, maybe. I just don't think he's going to have enough raw numbers to win this award.
Yeah, I tend to agree there. I mean, you look at this list, and I mean, Bijan is the favorite, which I think is interesting because there's quarterbacks this year who are going to start right away. So Bijan at plus 250, Bryce Young at plus 500, Richardson ahead of Stroud is interesting. Richardson at plus 600, Stroud at plus 750. JSN plus 800 as the first receiver, which I mean, he was the first receiver taken. Jahmyr Gibbs plus 900, Addison plus 1700, Zay Flowers plus 1800, and then Quentin Johnston plus 2000. So, like, I think in terms of like the best value bet there, like I do think I would probably say Gibbs. Like they're gonna throw him the football. Like he's gonna get a lot of touches. So Jahmyr Gibbs is a solid bet, I think. But Quentin's placement feels fair. I feel like I don't know if I would outright say Zay Flowers is gonna have more touches than Quentin, because I mean, like Mark Andrews is there, he's their number 1. They signed Odell. Like, are they really gonna throw the football that much? So I would say receiver wise, I think Quentin should have a stronger argument than Zay, because the Chargers are gonna throw the football a ton.
Yeah, makes sense.
Addison to me is like,
yeah,
I think he probably should be the top receiver on the odds list because he's the unquestioned number 2 in Minnesota.
Yeah, I would 100% agree there. If I had to pick anyone, it'd be Addison.
Yeah, so Addison's placement feels a little low because, like, if Addison gets 100 and if he gets 100 targets this year, I would not be shocked.
Yeah, so he's making up for Thielen, obviously.
Yeah.
Did they bring back not Ham? What's his name?
Gosh darn it.
No, gosh, no, I forget his name. Hold on. Vikings depth chart. I'm just curious if they lost more than Thielen this year on the depth chart.
I mean, they might be losing Dalvin Cook in a little bit.
Fair enough. Oh, the fullback's Ham. Who the heck am I thinking of? Oh, Osborne.
Maybe?
No, Osborne. Not even close. I got the Ham part and the Vikings right. Just it was completely Osborne. Never mind.
Yeah. Osborne's back though, isn't he?
Yeah, he is back.
Yeah, I do think this is a good point by Kapil. Quentin's going to have a lot more big play opportunities. That's very true because I don't think Addison, JSN are going to be kind of big play receivers. Although JSN too, like, he's wide receiver 3 there, but like he could get like 85, 90 catches pretty easily. But how many big plays is he going to get? I think that's a fair point from Kapil. Yeah, the Vikings do have TJ Hawkinson still, but Like, I think Jordan Addison's going to be, like, from a volume standpoint, Addison's going to be number 2 there. So, and the Vikings defense is going to be really bad, like really, really bad. So they're going to have to put up points.
Yeah. Yeah. So Thielen last year, 103 targets. So, yeah. Not saying he's Adam Thielen, but there's a lot of targets to make up.
Yeah. And I think there is a world where, like, Keenan and Mike stay healthy and Quentin still challenges for offensive rookie of the year. It would also kind of coincide with Justin Herbert's MVP case, I think. But,
right.
We'll see.
Yeah, no, if Quentin Johnston is even slightly in contention for that and guys are healthy, Herbert's winning MVP. I mean, that means like you've basically got 1,200, 1,300, and like 900-yard guys or something.
Yeah. I think as long as Quentin gets over like 800 yards, I think he could be at least like have a case, like depending on like what kind of big plays are we talking about? What kind of moments are we talking about? So I think there's a world where Quentin makes a strong case, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to be one of the quarterbacks. Like, I mean, the NFC South is so bad that Bryce Young could win 9 games, make the playoffs, and like that's a no-brainer, man. Like that's just how the awards go, I think.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm trying to go back to 2018 to see how many targets did Phillip Rivers get to his receivers that year. That's going to take me a moment. But I'm just curious because that's like the last time they had like a legit trio who also stayed healthy. So I'm just curious what is possible for like a wide receiver 3. Okay. Targets 125, 64, 63. It'll be more than that for Mike.
Yeah. Anthony Lynn was pretty set on like 50-50 split that year. Plus, I mean, Gordon caught the ball a lot. I mean, so did Ekler that year. So,
oh god, they still had Gates that year too,
and Hunter Henry. Oh wait, that was the year Hunter Henry tore his ACL.
He's because he came back for the Patriots game.
That's
barely.
Right. That's right. Wow. My guy Dalton Kincaid plus 3,500. I'm just saying, throwing that out there.
It's funny because I think he could legitimately be like the best on that list, even ahead of the receivers. We get Josh Allen, Dalton Kincaid. There's nothing really, unless he's behind Dawson Knox, which I doubt, but maybe.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move on here to Defensive Player of the Year. The Chargers have some long shots at the award. First and foremost, Derwin James plus 6,000. He's tied for 11th, but there's like, again, a lot of names ahead of him. And then Joey Bosa also on the list at plus 4,000. He's closer. He's tied for 8th, so he's at least like in the first like initial screen. Like you don't have to scroll down for Joey like you do for Derwin James. So what do you make of the Defensive Player of the Year chances for Derwin and Joey?
I would say fair. I would like to see, not that it's his fault where his odds are, but I would like to see Derwin James play like a closer to a Defensive Player of the Year this year, which again is so weird because he plays so well. But there was, if anyone watched his rookie year in 2018, there was just something different and something a bit more special, the way he affected the game. I think more than just having a lot of roles, he did a lot of things. Like he didn't just have different things to do. He was able to actually, like, I think, make an impact in more ways in 2018 that he has really, with Gus Bradley, with Brandon Staley. So I'd love to see him kind of get back to that 2018-ish form, although the role is a lot more simplified. But Joey Bosa, I get it. Like, why honestly would you put him ahead of some of these other pass rushers? There's no real reason to, even though he's a good pass rusher. The consistency hasn't been there. He was injured last year. The last time we saw him in the playoffs, wasn't doing so hot. Had the kind of the national TV thing happen. So yeah, I mean, Bosa ahead of him, Garrett ahead of him, Parsons ahead of him, Reddick ahead of him. I don't know about Burns ahead of him, but like Donald ahead of him. It all makes sense.
Yeah, there's I mean, he's tied with Roquan Smith and Patrick Surtain, so that's an interesting one. Hassan Reddick is plus 2,500, so he'll have the statistics for sure. Sauce Gardner plus 1,500. That's an interesting one. Yeah, Brian Burns is definitely the biggest surprise there in terms of like guys that are ahead of him. I was definitely drinking all the Kool-Aid last year when it came to Joey and Khalil and like how that pairing would work together. Because like I think if you I know the numbers weren't huge in 2021.
Mhm.
I mean, Joey was one of the most double teamed players in the league that year. But if you go back and watch the film of how Joey Bosa performed in 2021, I think you definitely see the film of like a top 5 edge rusher still.
Mhm.
Whether or not he's able to get back to that point after this groin core injury, we'll see. But I do think there's a world where Joey in this defense now with like Khalil and Morgan Fox and all these guys like coming back together, like I do think there's a world where Joey puts up 16 17 sacks. I just don't know if that's enough. I mean, like Micah Parsons is
Right.
going to eat this year. Like
Mhm.
Myles Garrett finally has help in Cleveland. Like he could hit 20 sacks. I wouldn't be shocked. Max Crosby. Like there's just so many guys. Like I think there's less of a team element in the individual awards, but like
Yeah.
the Chargers are going to have to be very, very good, and Joey's going to have to be like the key defensive player, and the defense is going to have to be much better. But statistically, like I think there's at least a chance that Joey finishes at like top 6 or 7 in voting in this award.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. It really just comes down to these rushers that win it. Typically, they have these ungodly years where it's like 100 pressures and 20 sacks or whatever it is. And Joey's just never really been that guy. He'll, I mean, honestly, if you ask me, like, is he a top 3 edge rusher at the end of this year? I could probably say yes. I could see that happening. But whether that means he's top 3 in terms of like defensive player of the year voting, I don't know, because we'll look at per play stats, we'll look at all that sort of stuff. Great. But people are going to look for the sack numbers, people look for the pressure numbers. And Joey just never really has racked up those stats, kind of like someone like, I don't know, Max Crosby the previous year, who again had like 102 pressures or whatever it was. Just doesn't happen for him.
Yeah, Joey's always been more of a win rate and film guy than he has like sheer numbers. So I understand that. Joey would have to have a huge season, like I said, for him to get Defensive Player of the Year candidacy. Like, I just think there's so many top-notch edge rushers that are like gonna put up those massive numbers. And his brother last year had like 110 pressures and like 14, 15 sacks. Like he had 4 or 5 strip sacks. Like he was just always wreaking havoc up there.
Yeah.
So I think plus 4,000, I think, is probably indicative of like where he is coming off of last season. But I do think like if there's like a top 10 release, like I wouldn't be surprised if Joey ends up in the top 10.
Totally. One thing I just want to bring up adjacent to all this is Peter, who talked about comeback player of the year. Hope you're enjoying your breakfast burritos you're making. We only didn't mention JC Jackson because he's not on the odds. For us, I'm surprised that he's not on the odds. But Steven,
100%.
Steven just mentioned that the Chargers don't have anyone because there's no one listed on DraftKings for the Chargers.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate the clarification there. So, and like LD Bruin points out, if Damar Hamlin plays every game, he's winning. Like he doesn't even have to start. Like he's just gonna win. Like, the comeback player of the year odds, again, similar to like coach of the year, like they don't make any sense. Like Tua is second on the list. Like,
yeah, I don't.
Tua played almost every game.
Yeah,
Russell Wilson is third. Like, what are we?
Like, no, what? That can't happen. No, I'll root for anybody. I'll root for Tua before Russ. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
back from what, losing his office?
Right. Like the comeback player of the year thing it's a popularity contest. It's like a narrative story award. So like JC Jackson coming back for us is really cool to see, right? Like he is already way further ahead of schedule than I would have thought. But like you're talking about Damar Hamlin, who like literally died on a football field. You're talking about John Mechie, who could come back from cancer.
Yeah.
Foster Moreau, like signed with the Saints, like he could come back from cancer like right away. Calvin Ridley coming back from the gambling suspension.
The entire Detroit Lions team coming back from the suspension.
Yeah, exactly. So I just think they're like, for us, he's a great story, but I think like nationally there are better stories.
Which is still so funny to me that Rivers won the award in 2013.
Yeah, because he didn't
the healthiest man alive. Yeah.
So I don't know. Like there's like I need some qualifications. Like what exactly is comeback player of the year mean? Like does it have to be somebody who's injured? Like Russell Wilson, comeback player of the year? Like what? What is he coming back from? Being terrible?
I mean, maybe, I guess. But even then, Stafford, Jimmy G, like some of these are just so. Is Baker starting somewhere?
Yeah, he's gonna start in Tampa.
When did I miss that? Wait, what?
Yeah, they obviously Tom Brady is retired.
God.
Blaine Gabbert signed in Kansas City, I want to say, to be the backup from Mahomes. So it's they're gonna have a competition in Tampa, but it's Baker versus Kyle Trask. So it's gonna be Baker.
Yeah, Frank Reich is winning Coach of the Year. If that's the division, they'll be fine.
Yeah, and Todd Bowles is probably gonna get fired. So
that is rough. Ooh.
That is rough. But that's another one too. Like, I mean, Baker coming back, like if he has a good season, like if the Bucks like surprise and make the playoffs, like, you know, media members will eat that up. All right, next one here. I was surprised at how high he ranked. That is Mr. Austin Eckler for Offensive Player of the Year. We haven't talked a ton about Eckler. I mean, outside of like the trade requests and things like that, he's currently plus 2,000 on DraftKings, tied for fourth for Offensive Player of the Year. Again, I feel like him having these kind of odds at this time last year would have made a lot of sense. This year, I'm a bit surprised at this. What are your thoughts here?
I guess there's maybe some expectation that, well, Austin Eckler's still on the team and they don't have anybody else behind him, and he does put up big numbers. So I guess like Austin Eckler wants to have, this is his contract year. So he's going to want to have a big year. The Chargers would love for him to have a great year. So when he goes somewhere else, they can get that comp pick. So, I mean, there's a world where you see, you know, at least better efficiency for the Chargers. I wouldn't say increased usage, but they're going to want to use him a lot because they're going to use him a lot and then get rid of him. So still, though, the placement here is surprising. Like, I don't know. I really don't know why he would be. If you had asked me where, you know, Austin Eckler would be, I'd say outside of the top 10, 15 easily. I would have listed like Garrett Wilson now. I listed some quarterbacks. So it's a bit of a surprise that Eckler is so high here. And then does he ever get love from voting members? Certainly not the Pro Bowl. Well, that's a very different thing. So
yeah,
like what would he do this year that's so different than the last 2 years to put him in Offensive Player of the Year? Like,
right.
I don't see what else he could do at this point. Even if he has another great year, he did that last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, he's scored 40 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons. It's like maybe last year probably would have been a better chance for him, but
yeah,
you know, so Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase tied for plus 1,000 with the lead. Christian McCaffrey is would be standalone second at plus 1,400. And then it's Justin Fields, Jonathan Taylor, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, and Eckler tied for fourth. So like Vegas, at least right now, is expecting, you know, another elite Austin Eckler season. And I don't know like where the touches are going to come from. He's definitely not catching 100 passes this year. You know, the touchdowns, like maybe he gets to like 15 total. Like I think like with the amount of weapons the Chargers have now on offense and presumably like a healthier season from Mike and Keenan and Donald Parham, like Eckler's going to have some, you know, natural regression in terms of touchdowns and receiving production that I have a hard time believing that. Like he would have to rush for over 1,000 yards for the first time in his career and still be like a legit, like, you know, top 5, 6-ish in touchdowns. Like he's going to have like a much better season on the ground than we've seen in the past for him to be Offensive Player of the Year. If he didn't win it last year, man, like he's going to have to like do something he's never done. And that's rush for over 1,000 yards, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm looking at, so Derrick Henry won it in 2020. I'm curious what his stats were, because even with like Jonathan Taylor having a great year, the previous year Cooper Kupp won. So
yeah.
Yeah, so Derrick Henry had 2,027 yards and touchdowns. So, you know, it's going to take a bit.
I mean, Jonathan Taylor, what did he have in 2021? Wasn't he close to like 1,800 yards, I want to say, and he scored 20 touchdowns, mostly on the ground too.
Yeah, so in terms of rushing, Jonathan Taylor in 2021, 1,800 yards, 18 touchdowns. receiving somewhere in there, and still lost to Cooper Kupp, which I get. Like Cooper Kupp had a great year.
Cooper Kupp won the Triple Crown for the first time in like 20 years. So
yeah,
it's so hard for running backs to win these kind of awards now. Like you have to do truly something special, like Derrick Henry rushing for 2,000 yards. Because like you go through this list and like, Jamar Chase could get 2,000 yards receiving. Like I think that's in the realm of possibilities here. Tyreek Hill is a great receiver. Stephon Diggs, Garrett Wilson with Aaron Rodgers. Like Ekler would have to do something like special on the ground for him to really like merit this kind of hype.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you want 2,000 yards? I won't stop you. Please go for it. But that's such a significant leap for him. And I get the Chargers will be more efficient this year, but that I don't mean like not by what do you have last year? 800 rushing yards, 900.
It was close to 9. I want to say it was like 850 or something like that.
It's almost like 2.5 times your typical rushing yard season on top of your receiving duties. So
yeah. What do you think is like statistically, if everybody stays like mostly healthy, what do you think Eckler's like best case from a receiving standpoint is this year?
Oh, geez. It's tough. So every team they're playing this year seems good. So I don't think there's any, we're just going to sit in the fourth quarter and run it out sort of thing. So I think they're going to have to be in every game throwing it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to look at, because he's still the lead guy. Like it's not even like, we're talking about Spiller, we're talking about Kelly. I just don't know if they're.
I don't think Spiller and Kelly are going to eat very much into their receiving workload.
Right. So, it's weird because everything's on like a 17-game season now, but I'll say 75 targets. I don't know. What did he have last year? 125? Something ridiculous.
Yeah, because that was like when he was basically receiver 1 for them for like 4 weeks.
Right. I'd have to know also maybe a bit more of like Kellen Moore's tendencies to use running backs. How much are they relied on for an outlet?
So I think in 2022, Ekler was 127 targets and 107 catches. So he caught the ball a ton. A lot of that was like checkdowns and swing passes. So he did have his lowest yards per reception total, which was 6.7 per average.
Mm-hmm.
In 2021, he had 94 targets and 70 catches. That was 9.2 yards per reception and 8 touchdowns, though. So like he was incredibly productive as a receiver in 2021 and efficient. 2020, obviously, that was when he was injured. 65 targets, 54 receptions, 7.5 yards per reception. 2019, with Melvin Gordon's last year, that year he had 108 targets and 92 receptions for 993 yards and 8 touchdowns. So very productive that year. 2018, 53 catches, 39 targets, 404 yards, 10 yards per reception, is best of his career, and 3 touchdowns. So let's see.
I'll stick to 75. Stacks. Oh, Zeke's, yeah.
Just as a receiver. So Zeke's career high with Kellen Moore as offensive coordinator was 71 targets and 54 catches. So that was 420 yards on the ground. When in 2018, when Kellen Moore was the quarterback's coach, Zeke had 95 targets and 77 catches. Last year's he hasn't really been used very much as a receiver, though. 23 targets this past year.
Yeah, but I'd be shocked if he cleared 100 this year.
Tony Pollard had 55 targets. So last year you had basically, what did I say? 25 for Zeke, 55 for Pollard. So is that 70? 70 combined targets between the two of them?
No, Zeke had more than that, no? Did you say like 71 targets?
No, I meant last year. Zeke's career high with Kellen was 71 targets.
Oh, his career high was. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Last year was 25, and then 55 for Pollard.
25 for Zeke? Jeez, dude.
Yeah. So I think like best case for Ekler as a receiver, if everybody stays healthy, I think you're looking at maybe like 60 catches, 550 yards kind of thing, like a few touchdowns here and there. But like they're going to throw the ball to the receivers way more. I mean, Everett's coming back. Parham is going to be back. Like there's just way more options this year than there was the past few years.
Yeah. Arjun is sort of trying to mine through some data and find some patterns and things for like Kellen Moore and even like the width of the formation. He's looking at data like that. So, I'm really curious how often in those 3 wide receiver sets the ball ended up going to the running back in like a non-check down situation.
Yeah. That's the kind of stuff where I'm just like, okay, like, yeah, that's a lot of change from the past of how we can look at data. All right. The big one here, Justin Herbert is plus 1,200 for MVP this year. He's tied for 5th. So just looking at the odds for MVP, I think people are pretty bullish on Justin Herbert this year, and I think some of that is rightfully so. We've seen him, put up big time numbers over the last couple of years. So for those who are wondering, it's Patrick Mahomes is the favorite at plus 700, Joe Burrow second plus 750. Josh Allen plus 800, Jalen Hurts plus 900, and then Lamar and Justin Herbert both at plus 1,200. What do you make of Herbert's placement here, Tyler?
I'd say Hurts is a bit of a surprise. I mean, yes, they do have Sirianni there, but I'm just curious how much people believe in that sustainability from year to year to year. Yes, he made a big leap forward, and so I guess he could keep that same play, but can he do it again, especially without Shane Steichen? I don't know. Him behind Mahomes, Burrow, and Allen makes sense. Those guys all went further in the playoffs or have been further in the playoffs. Mahomes at number 1, completely understand. Tied with Lamar Jackson is interesting. I feel like you'd need to see that. So I guess if I had any like qualms with anything, it'd be that Herbert should probably be 4th ahead of Hurts, probably. I also just think there's a bit of more of a narrative this year. You're like, okay, he was hurt last year. He broke his ribs and he tore his labrum. And now he's got Kellen Moore and he can finally throw it down the field and get back to that sensational, rookie season where they were throwing it down the field more, hopefully. So I think that, he shouldn't pass the trio of AFC quarterbacks based on how far the team has gone. But I think 4th is solid. And I do really like his odds.
Yeah, I think you hit on the key points there. Like I mentioned earlier, narratives are so strong with how these awards are voted upon. And the whole thing with Justin Herbert the past couple of years, I mean, outside of just like his play, is like, oh, we want him to throw the ball down the field more. Like we want him to really test everything. Like we want him to do this, we want him to do that. Well, what's the way to do that? You get him Kellen Moore, you get him Quentin Johnston. And then you mentioned the injury stuff too. Like people forget like on social media, but like media members remember the injuries that he has dealt with. And so, coming back from the ribs, coming back from the shoulder, you get Keenan and Mike Williams coming back, presumably more healthy. You get Kel Moore, Quentin Johnston. Like, there's going to be a very strong narrative for Justin Herbert. And like, I think the numbers are going to be there for him. Like Kapil is pointing out, like him healthy, new offensive coordinator. There's definitely a recipe for him to finish in the top 3. But the final piece is obviously going to be how do the Chargers end up in the win-loss record? Because if they're, the 6th seed in the AFC and Herbert leads the league in passing, that's great, but it's not going to be an MVP season. So I think Herbert could ultimately come very, very close to winning this award this year. I think he's going to come back with a vengeance from these injuries. I really do. But how many games do the Chargers win? Like, do they beat the Chiefs? Like, if they win the division, if they're a 2 seed in the AFC or a 3 seed in the AFC and Herbert leads the league in passing, I think that's a really strong argument for MVP. Dethroning the Chiefs in a season after they won the Super Bowl. Like there's definitely a world where Herbert wins the MVP, but the team has to win games as well and probably at least very, bare minimum win the division.
Yeah, I would he's a good guy to bet the money on, but I don't know if I would predict it. Like, it's a good spot to bet money on,
Yeah.
but I won't predict it, to be honest, because I don't have them finishing ahead of the Chiefs. So does that mean that Mahomes is the MVP? Not necessarily, but I just think that I don't have the Chargers ahead of the Chiefs. And again, like you said, like the 6th seed, whatever it is, despite the numbers that he might have, it's not enough. Like that,
Yeah.
that means that in 1 or 2 of those Chiefs games and in some other primetime games, maybe against the Bills, against the Patriots, things didn't work out. And so that's not enough. And does it mean it's a bad season? No, but I just think Chargers finished behind the Chiefs this year. And so I can't really predict the MVP for him.
Yeah, for what it's worth, the DraftKings has him plus 700 to lead the league in passing, which is 3rd only behind Mahomes and Burrow. So again, like I think the narrative will be there. I think the story will be there. I think the statistics will be there for Justin Herbert, but the team has to really carry some weight here. And again, if Herbert has an MVP type season, then we're probably seeing like other awards, right? So, Herbert can, I think, get there, and I think like he'll be in the running down the stretch, as long as everybody stays relatively healthy. But does that translate to wins? Like that's the final piece here that we're just a little unsure about.
Yeah.
But plus 1,200 for Justin Herbert, a guy who could lead the league in passing, I think that's a fantastic bet. Sorry, we're reading some comments here.
You're good. I thought we died or something. Okay.
No. Tyler, any other thoughts about some of these awards?
Not really, other than comeback player of the year. JC should be on there, at least on the list. There's like 80 other players.
I know.
So he should be on there somewhere, but nope. So I hope these guys are all in contention for the awards.
Yeah, because that would mean the Chargers have a great season.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So yeah, I'm excited to see. I do think the offense is going to be so much better this year, so much more fun to watch, more explosive. Need the defense to carry some more weight this year for sure.
Oh yeah.
All right, so we're about 43 minutes in today. We'll take questions for about 15 minutes from you guys this afternoon. So if you have questions, obviously super chats are appreciated. That will ensure that we answer your questions. But other than that, yeah, start firing away, and we'll get to some other conversations here. Tyler, are you drinking tea or coffee or what?
Tea, although I'm out now, so I gotta brave the next 15 minutes, but we're gonna make it.
Yeah, I've always because sometimes after we have like a long episode, like my throat gets like really dry and stuff, Like I don't know how these guys who talk for 3 hours on their shows do it, man. Like, and every day.
Gollum juice. Did you ever hear that Andy Serkis thing where he had to like do the Gollum voice all the time? So they made this thing called
I
Gollum
bet that would
juice.
Kill your throat.
Yeah, it was just like gobs of honey and tea and whatever they could find.
That makes sense. Mascot wants to know if we are going to be at training camp. So Tyler obviously lives down there, so he's going to be able to go more than I will be. I'm planning to come down for at least 2 weekends of camp this year. Although we should be getting some more access than years past. So gonna be a ton of fun, man. I love training camp. It's one of the best experiences as a fan that you can have. So if you've never been to training camp, I would definitely encourage you to get up there. It's the last year they're going to be at Costa Mesa too. So, next year again, they're going to be in El Segundo at the new facility, which will be awesome to see in person. But, Costa Mesa, it's right. It's like 15 minutes away from Newport. It's a great area to go like spend a little vacation and stuff like that. So I don't know what your plans are, Tyler, but I'll be down for probably 2 weekends this year.
Yeah, if you guys see me down there a lot, that means I'm unemployed. So hopefully you don't see me down there as I wrap up my teaching credential. I will be down there, so I might still have a job. Don't get me wrong, but the weekday stuff is going to be a little bit tougher. Oh no, I know.
I mean, school doesn't start until middle of August.
Never mind. I will be down there and I'll be employed. How about that?
There you go. Speaking into existence.
Yeah. So I'll be down there for as many as I can. My mom's become a huge fan. She knows all like the players' numbers and stuff now. So she wants to go. So we'll definitely be down there. I'll be down there. Steven and I will be down there.
Yeah.
Arjun and I will be down there. I'm sure Arjun will be there at some point. Yeah, so I'd love to be there. Hopefully we can hop the fence, but we'll see.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, last year I didn't have the time to make it down, but this year I will make time to come down. So your mom says the first day of camp is your birthday?
It tends to be around there, but I don't think it is. I mean, if my mom found out what the schedule was, I wouldn't be surprised at this point. But
Yeah.
I don't think they've released the schedule yet. But typically, it's around my birthday.
Yeah, it's usually like last week of July is when they start up. So, they do that like back together Saturday that everything
Yeah.
happens this year. I'm pretty sure they're joint practicing with the Saints this year. So that'll be a fun one. Hopefully Trevor Penning's on his best behavior that day.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, that'll be
Really?
good. Yeah. Did you not know that?
Oh yeah, huh? I don't know. I thought it was a different team this year.
No, because I don't think they'll joint practice with the Rams, but and then the Seahawks is the last preseason game. So they'll do joint practices with the Saints.
Why did I think it was the Cowboys? Oh, because it was last year.
That was his last year, yeah. All right, we'll get to the next question here from Kapil. He wants to know, did you guys watch some all-22 film on Darius Davis? What did you see from him as a slot receiver, especially as a deep slot threat? Any thoughts here, Tyler?
I did not watch him intentionally. I was just looking for the other than like some of the fun plays, mostly just looking for the return stuff.
Yeah, so I watched him. I think as a deep slot threat, he can make some fun plays. I think he gets in a little trouble with his size. If you're a little bit more physical with him, he can get rerouted at times. But he's got some wiggle, he's got some juice. Like, I mean, that 4.3 speed is legit. So if you're playing like deep cushion against Darius Davis, he can certainly make you pay. I loved watching them use him as like a jet sweep and then vertical route option at TCU. So they would motion him and then he would run like a wheel route, or he would run like a slot fade, or like turn it into a post. And so I think he has some legit receiving chops that people are not necessarily talking about. Not that he's going to be like wide receiver 4 or anything, but I think the team is going to trust him to be more than a receiver. I think you're probably looking at somewhere in between Andre Roberts and DeAndre Carter in terms of his like receiving role. Obviously DeAndre Carter played a lot more because of injuries, but they didn't use Andre Roberts at all as a wide receiver. So I think they'll use him at least somewhat. I'm not expecting like a ton of production, but I do think there is some legit receiving chops there.
Yeah, there should be. I don't know what the difference is between the Chargers and the Cowboys in terms of 3 wide receiver sets, but the Cowboys run it a lot, or they ran it a lot with Kellen Moore. So there's just going to be more receivers on the field. And if Arjun, because he was talking to us about, the Cowboys had some of the widest formations in the league. I think it was 7th or 8th in the league in 2021 for like half a season, which is all the data he had, but it's the best we can go with. So I think opening up the field like that and then having someone Darius Davis would be huge for the team.
Yeah, 100%. People have thrown out like the Tyreek Hill stuff, and not to single May Scott out because he's not the only one. Listen, man, if Darius Davis becomes Tyreek Hill, then that means they got like the best pick of the draft by far. I think you're probably looking at somebody who can like occasionally give you like 400 or 500 yards receiving, like at best.
Well, that'd be a slam dunk if you can get a returner like that and he gives you 400 or 500 yards. Yeah, guys are probably hurt then, but not bad.
Yeah. Scott Child's pointing out they didn't have to use Roberts because the receiver room is healthy. He's also not a good receiver.
No.
Okay. Jeremy Williams wants to know, how are you able to juke your dad and not become a deluded Raider fan?
Jamarcus Russell. What is he going to do? Convince me to watch that team? No. So, I mean, it was literally like the Raiders were god awful.
Right.
Like bad. My dad almost stopped watching football because after like the post Gruden era, really until like Derek Carr, was terrible. Like Terrell Pryor was their quarterback, who ended up being a receiver, for like the for Washington or something at some point. It was rough. So yeah, there was nothing to root for there. They were dreadful, and the Chargers were outstanding, and they were like local. Like there was a time where the Chargers were really good, and when I hit middle school and I started to like football and want to, watch the teams. So see, middle school for me would have been like 06, 07, 08. So it's like, yeah, who am I going to root for? Yeah, Daniel Tomlinson just had 31 touchdowns, and they play, in San Diego. So for me, it was like the local team, if you will. Grew up in Orange County, so yeah, my dad grew up in LA, so obviously he's older than I am, so more of a Raiders fan. Me, obviously, Chargers fan.
Yeah, I mean, your dad growing up in LA, like that's when the Raiders were at their prime. Like that was, Raiders were like so good with Al Davis and that team, and they were, Howie Long and all those guys. So, I mean, your dad being a Raiders fan makes sense. Like that's people always like are surprised at the Raiders turnouts in LA games, but it's like there was a time where the Raiders were like the kings of LA, and so like they still have very strong roots there. But when we were kids, the Raiders were like worse than god awful. They were so bad in the mid 2000s after their like last little Super Bowl run. Like they fell off a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just like they were bad, and then there were like character concerns all over the place. And so it totally makes sense why somebody in Orange County would be like, yeah, I'm going to go down to San Diego instead and watch the more fun team that has a really good team and really cool players too.
Yeah. I never even went to a Raiders game as a kid. I mean, granted, they were further, and I don't think my dad's just gonna like up and take me to Oakland, when I'm 5. But but we just there was nothing really to go off of. I will say, like, the Raiders are part of the reason I started liking football in general, but that's actually not because of the way that they were at the time. It's just back when people watched cable TV and they had like the NFL film segments, and they'd have like Ghost to the Post or the Sea of Hands, two very classic Raiders moments. One against the Dolphins. I forget which one was Ghost to the Post, but like watching like the nostalgia of the NFL and watching these guys play and watching oh gosh, what's the Raiders quarterback's name? Dang it, my dad's gonna kill me. It's not Staubach. It's obviously the longer hair.
Gannon?
Nope, longer hair. Stabler, Ken Stabler. Like watching those films and those things, that nostalgia helped me like the NFL because I thought it was so cool. But their team sucked, like really bad.
Yeah, no, the Raiders in the mid 2000s, man, were different kind of train wreck. Like I don't think we've really seen a team like go from like consistent Super Bowl contender like they were in like the late 90s to like bottom of the league for like 10 years that way.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point where what's 3 Super Bowls, I think, to them. Washington, Vikings, Eagles. Of course I would know that. They it's almost like if the Steelers of this modern era suddenly just became like the Browns. Not worse than that. Well, like that bad era of Browns, which you could say is most every year. They were one of the class teams of the league. And again, that's why I liked watching the nostalgic versions of them, just not the current ones.
Yeah. For me, the question was about you, obviously, but growing up in Utah, like the Broncos are the local team there. And similar, like they were really bad in the mid 2000s. We like the Cowboys were like weirdly like the second local team in Utah because they were like the biggest brand. So we got every single Cowboys game every single week. And so my dad and my brother were both loosely Cowboys fans. My dad's not so much anymore. My brother still is. But I was not going to do that. So we had cousins who lived down in Oceanside, and we went to visit them when I was like 8 for Thanksgiving. We went to a Chargers Titans game, I want to say, and so that's what did it for me. Like seeing LT in person was just like, and that was after my first year of football, Little League football, and so it was like that was like the prime spot time to pick a team.
Yeah, definitely. I was almost a Saints fan. Only because at least USC was good, right? So I was
because of Reggie. Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, it might be like I just had no real connection to a team other than my dad being a Raiders fan. So I basically I was going to pick anything but the Raiders, it seemed.
Yeah.
So I was almost going to be a Saints fan, but like, I mean, they weren't good. Of course, like right when I was about to be a Saints fan, they won the Super Bowl like 2 years later. So
Yep.
that's my luck. But oh well.
Yeah, good times there. All right, we'll do one last question here from El Bobby. I think this is an important one. He wants to know, how big of an impact do you think the new facility / location will make for the organization? Obviously, the Chargers taking media members on a tour of the new practice facility this week. The timeline for that apparently is that they're hoping to be done by the spring, and the Chargers are hoping to be able to have their draft headquarters be at the new facility next year, and then have like a true opening for like training camp, but like the players will have OTAs and stuff like that at the new facility. So it seems ahead of schedule. Obviously it's in El Segundo. It's a great location for the team. It's like 20 minutes away from SoFi, maybe less. Close to the beach, close to where the Kings have their practice facility, where the Lakers have theirs, where the Clippers will have their new basketball arena. So Tyler, what do you make of, like the logistics and the location of how the Chargers are doing this in El Segundo?
Yeah, it's nice that the Chargers will have something to identify with that is theirs. They're using the practice field, at Costa Mesa. They obviously share a stadium with the Rams. To have a place that's their own, I think is really good for building their identity and for just being in the city. Like the Costa Mesa venue, I think was honestly perfect for the time that they had it, especially as you're between LA and San Diego.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really helpful for kind of making that transition. But you're the Los Angeles Chargers now, and you have been for a few years. And I think as you're really trying to establish, you're finally in your new stadium. You're not at StubHub. You're establishing yourself as a legit LA team. Hopefully, being out there, I think, is a lot better. So I think it's really solid. I think it's good for them to have this, all the upgraded stuff, whatever it ends up being. If you're talking to me and you just tell me that, with this new facility, they have better training equipment and more trainers, or things are better for them to get healthier. They have more, whatever, like any little edge, anything that they can possibly find to get an edge in the NFL would be huge. So I think that them having this would be really, really good.
Yeah, I agree. And like the Costa Mesa spot, it was really nice too, because it was close to Carson for them. Like it wasn't that far of a drive for games. You're able to kind of build a connection with like that part of Southern California. And like when I go to games, there's a lot of people who like are fans of the team because like they live it down in Orange County. They can go to training camp, like have that experience with their families. Like that's been a good thing for the Chargers. But at the same time, it's like time for them to take that next step. And this practice facility is a big part of that. Michael Lopez pointed out the hot tubs. The facilities in general were like the biggest knock on the Chargers when it came to like that NFLPA survey. It was like the lack of eating areas. It was the poor hot tubs. It was the lack of training equipment, like all this stuff. And the Chargers are getting what was it, like a $2 billion facelift or whatever the whole thing is costing. So it's a big time upgrade from a facility standpoint. Like they're getting 3 football fields at this thing. There's going to be a bar lounge area for season ticket holders to go to. Like everything you could possibly want in a new practice facility, the Chargers are going to have. And then the location is perfect too, because like you're talking about, it's in LA. It's actually in LA because right now, most of the players and facility and staff members, they probably live down in Costa Mesa because that's where they are every day. And then they have to drive an hour and a half up to SoFi Stadium for games. So it's just kind of a disaster. So players will be able to move up more closer to that area, more convenient for them. It's like right next to LAX as well. So it's everything you could want in terms of an upgrade, I think, and it's going to be huge for the team.
Yeah, this is the interesting point. You sort of already started talking about it. Will the players move out of Orange County now? They live in Newport Beach. It's tough to say. Like, I don't know where everybody lives, obviously, but yeah. I think like the drive to SoFi isn't that bad from, let's say, like when I lived in Huntington Beach or Fountain Valley or Irvine now. It's not bad, but if I'm an NFL player on game day, like
doing that every day too.
Yeah. So granted, I think how far is the facility from SoFi? 10 minutes, something like that.
Yeah.
Not too far.
If there's traffic, it probably takes them 20.
Yeah. So maybe you get like a fall winter house. They can afford it. Go get yourself like
Yeah.
another. They're fine. I'd have to drive. But they can.
Sorry to cut you off. I don't know if Janae likes the Selling Sunset show. Have you watched that on Netflix before?
No.
So it's like a real estate like reality bull crap on Netflix, but Brooke loves it, and I like looking at the houses. And this real estate agent had this client who was like buying a investment property in the hills and then like wanted to buy another house to live at in Malibu. And I'm like, okay, sure, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that. Employed or not employed by a school, I won't be able to do that.
He'd have to be employed by like 6 or 7 schools.
I'll make it work somehow.
I think some players like initially they might like stick where they're at, like somebody like Keenan, who's probably lived in that area for the last 6 or 7 years. Like, I don't know if he'll move, but like a new player coming, like they're going to probably want to live like closer to the facility. So I think it'll be some kind of transition. Like when the Chargers moved to LA, Rivers and a bunch of other players still lived down in San Diego for at least like that first year. So there will be a transition period for the guys who have kind of been in Southern California for a long time.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Yeah, it was always just so funky at Costa Mesa where like they have to take a bus. Like it's not like they had the facility, they get wrapped and then they walk out to the field. It was like they're over there, wherever they came from. Like we never got access to that. And then they had to get a bus to the field and then
for training camp.
Yeah. So this just seems like much more streamlined. I'm sure the AC is going to be great. Everything's new. It's clean.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
And they'll have a cafeteria that actually like can fit the players and everything. Like everything looks so incredible in that facility. I can't wait to go and see it when it's done.
I know. Hopefully we get some sort of fun access, but we'll see. Keep supporting the show so we don't get fired.
Yeah, absolutely. But I like from a advantage standpoint, like I think having a brand new facility is a big deal for free agents. Like if you are like wanting this like from a free agency standpoint, like if you're a player who's got an offer from the Chargers or who's got an offer from like, I don't know, let's say like the Panthers. I don't know. Just throwing this out there. I don't know what the Panthers facilities are like, but it's like you're debating between these two things and it's like LA, Justin Herbert, new practice facility, like all of that matters. And so
yeah,
I think a lot of it is like the advantages are going to be like from a day-to-day basis, but like having a brand spanking new facility, that helps from a free agent standpoint as well.
Yeah. Did you see the Viking schedule release video?
Yeah, at their practice facility.
Yeah, the drones fly through. Like they have just everything was so nice and state of the art. Yeah. It was really, I was really jealous watching that one. So Chargers get something like that, doing pretty good.
Yeah, like if you've seen the videos of the practice facility, like locker room now in Costa Mesa, it almost looks like an old college. Like there's just like, you know what I mean? Like it looks like a place where like some of these teams will go do training camp at a college. And that's what the Chargers locker room looks like. It looks like an old like Division II college.
Yeah. I mean, it's across from a community college. I don't even know what the complex is for. Is it OCC has a football team, but like I don't know.
The building was like an office building. Like it wasn't it wasn't like a football thing. I don't know if they just like bought the whole building and then like tore some of it down or what, but yeah, I don't know. All right. Sounds like a good place to stop then.
Oh, you're waiting for me to comment on that?
I don't know. I didn't know if you had anything else to add.
No, it would be another hour.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, yeah, that's going to do it for us today. We will be live on next week for our next episode here on Thursday. We'll be, of course, on the Chargers feeds on Tuesday. We're going to have a lot of fun with that episode. We're going to be sorting out the AFC hierarchy. So we talked a lot today about like, well, how might the Chargers, beat out the Chiefs and stuff like that. On Tuesday, we'll sort everything out in the AFC, talking about like the notable offseason moves and everything like that. So stay tuned there. And then, we're coming up on the dead period officially, where there's not a ton of stuff to talk about. So we'll be creative. We'll have some fun shows like we did last year. But appreciate everybody in the chat today. Appreciate Tyler for his time as always. That's going to do it for us today. We'll see you guys later.